Welcome back, everybody. This is JenSandwiches, here to take another bite out of Zombie Exodus Safe Haven. Not a whole lot happened last time, but we did meet Jamie's cousin, Moses, who is Woody. I don't know. We're talking to him right now, so let's find out more about Woody Moses. So, let's see if they were close. Are you and Jamie close? Let's see. Woody's nose wrinkles. We're cousins, and I love him as a Christian, but that boy's been a pain in my rear end since we were kids. We were close until we hit the teen years, and then Jamie sprang up tall and wide practically overnight. He got to be higher than the bars on a giraffe. Woody raises his hand over his head to show the height. Okay, Woody, I get it, you say. Right, so Jamie was an introvert in his younger years, but we spent lots of time together, playing cowboys, building forts and tree houses, camping in the woods. He liked joking with me, playing pranks, but it was all good fun. Once he sprang up, he started doing sports and exercising like a fiend, and he gained popularity. He was still Jamie, but he had new friends and all sorts of attention. We drifted apart. Jamie wasn't mean or a bully. He just went off and did his own thing. We'd try to hang out, go to a bar or a Rockies game, but we didn't have the same bond as when we were kids. Woody digs one hand into the depths of the laptop and wiggles something too deep to see. Oops, I think I just popped that whatchamacallit. Part of the fun for me is trying new things and experimenting, even if I wind up breaking the thing. Huh. Sure, I'm interested too. Woody pauses and waves his pliers in the air as he speaks. We're kindred spirits, then. I'm always getting things, pulling them apart, and working to put them back together. The challenge and discovery motivates me. If things break, so be it. I'll get another one. Woody flips the laptop over, scratches his chin, and hits a few buttons on the keyboard. When nothing happens, he shrugs and flips it back over to inspect the inner chamber again. Okay, well, let's see. Am I, friends with him yet? Let's see. No, he's my associate, but that's okay. That's alright. Oh, now Lyle's my friend after he stole all my shit. Thanks a lot, Lyle. Ugh. Okay, let's see. He was at a conference. Woody's eyebrows raise, eyes widen, and he perks up at the question. It was a good one, the 3rd annual Native American Indigenous Community Cultural Conference. This year I was hosting a round table on the role of medicine women in breaking gender stereotypes. It was called Taking the Man Out of Shaman. Oh my god. Brandon von Flettercorn from Cornell was going to attend. Him and his big grant money. He wouldn't know a real medicine woman if one shot him in the butt with an arrow. Anyway, the conference was 3 days and nightfall at the Sheraton, but as I was checking in, the outbreak broke out. That's a tricky way to say it. The outbreak broke out. Over the past half hour, most of the laptop parts have been taken out and lie in piles on the coffee table. With more parts of the computer outside than in, Woody starts the process of reassembly. His brow crinkles, and one eye squints as he stares at each piece. Oh, piece and wire. Okay, now I think it's appropriate to ask him what he's doing with the laptop. Woody flips the laptop over and it slips through his fingers. He fumbles and almost drops it before slamming the case against his right thigh in order to keep it from hitting the ground. On my way here, I spotted a changed-over infected gnawing at a cast on the leg of an older woman. If not for her leg being broken and that dumb creature chewing the white covering, that lady would be dead. Still, the pain of the zombie wrench in that leg had her screaming, so I ran over and smacked his head with the point of this laptop. It hasn't run right since. Woody installs the last piece of the laptop and screws the case back together. Flipping it over to rest on his lap, he presses the power button. It hums for a few seconds, then lets out a deep, grinding roar, which turns into a screech. After 20 seconds have passed, the screen flickers, bathing Woody's face in a pinkish hue. Daggone, it's still pink, Woody says. Okay. Do you need anything? Woody wrinkles his nose and scratches his chin. Right now, just a bath and a place to change my clothes. I've got some supplies to share, since I'm guessing you couldn't run to the market in the past few days. Otherwise, I just need a place to rest until Jamie makes it here. and then we'll find a way to safer territory. I'm low on my allergy meds, but sneezing and sniffling is the least of my worries. The pollen's kicked up angrier than a hornet swarm. I went by the pharmacy, but it was already boarded and locked. Of course, I'm worried about Jamie, so if you really want to know what I need, it's for him to show up here. Jamie didn't sound too great last we spoke. Sounded tired and worried. Haven't heard him like that in a long time. Next, you say... I don't want to hear about his thesis, but I want him to like me because I need more friends, so... You want to hear about that? Well, get comfy, Woody says and settles into the couch. My graduate work in anthropology consisted of studying the two Ute tribes of Colorado, the southern Utes, I don't know, and the mountain. I'm just gonna skip that word, I don't know, and the mountain tribe. Since my mother had shacked up with Nahi, I got to learn about his people, the southern ones. They really are divided into two distinct groups, much like the rest of America. The haves and the have-nots. Nahi was a have-not. See, poverty among these people is not what we think of poverty. They have nothing and live off nothing, and what they do acquire they share with people who have even less. Still, they're rich in spirit and community and history, and somehow they use it all to survive. He reaches into his backpack and takes out a plastic container of clear liquid. He pops the lid and drinks, spilling some into his beard. Don't worry, it's water. I don't drink alcohol. See what it's done to... What? Oh. See what it's done to good people. He pops the lid back on and returns the container to his bag. Where was I? Woody says, rubbing his chin through his beard. Oh, right. I was telling you about the spirit of the people. I was doing work on my thesis, Influences of Ute Mythology on Modern Culture. Let me know if you ever want to read it. Through my mom's boyfriend, Nahi, I was allowed to live among the southern tribe outside of La Plata on a reservation. At first, I lived with Nahi in his trailer, but it was cramped and smelled of hard-boiled eggs, which he'd eat a dozen of a day. A wonderful Ute woman, Shima, invited me to move into her home. The spirits had never blessed her with children, she said, and her siblings had all passed to the Great Plains beyond. She didn't want to live alone, and, in trade, I would put out her trash, clean the house, take care of her yard work. We grew fond of one another, and I looked up to her as if she was a grandmother. Several months after I came to live with Shima, I came across a story in the tribe's library about a creature called the Wendigo. Oh, anybody ever played Until Dawn? Shit. Anyway, a vicious and horrid spirit that haunts dreams and curses people to damnation. Shima was wonderful as a storyteller, and so I asked her about it. At first, she was reluctant to talk about the myth. To speak of such things invites them in, she would say. After a few days of prodding and bribing her with Kit Kats, her favorite treat, she told me the myth. The Wendigo is a spirit of evil brought on by the greed and corruption of man, and it takes the shape of a gaunt and starving being, almost skeletal, with ragged features, pocked and diseased skin, and wearing the smell of death. It's said that the Wendigo causes those it touches to bear its corruption and crave the flesh of living people. Kinda like a zombie. Woody rises from the couch and stretches his legs. His face wears a stern countenance, almost one of worry. After a few passing moments, he returns to the couch. I became interested in the Wendigo myth, and for a time it consumed my research. Native American scholars believe the myth was created as a parable by chieftains and elders of villagers to dissuade their tribe's people from acts of depravity and the taboo. During times of famine, when villagers were starving and their hunger overcame their sensibilities, cannibalism was an escape. The Wendigo came along as a means to control the people, to make them afraid of the creature that would forever invade their dreams should they take to eating flesh. It was a myth that lived and breathed among the older Ute, and though they passed it on, the younger Ute thought of it as a hokum to scare people out of practices of their ancestors. My research got back on track after that digression. Months flew by, and I became well-liked and even respected, and I don't say that to blow smoke up my own hole, but to establish that the Ute came to accept me as much as they could an outsider. It was one fateful event that turned it all to hell. It was the first time I saw living death. Jeez. You shift on the sofa and stare up at Woody as he dabs the sweat off his brow with a handkerchief. The lines in his face are more pronounced, and he's showing the tension you hear in his voice. About 4 months I've been with the Southern Ute, and one night I wandered far from Shima's house into the mountains, past La Plata, where the spruce and fire are thickest and all other manner of life fail to grow in plenty. Up past a river I never knew existed and have not located on a map, there lies a clearing of several structures older than modern construction, made in part of wood and part of packed dirt. There were 3 of them, 2 being as small as Nahi's trailer and just as wide, but one being as large as this home we're in now. I noticed movement in the larger building and spied through a window several elders of the Southern Utes sitting on the floor around a fire pit. 6 men and 3 women. They wore the skins and paint of their forebears and chanted and passed a pipe in the scant light of that fire, and as I stood and watched, I could swear the smoke was mixing with the shadows to make apparitions in the air. Now, I'm a man of science and subscribe to no religion, but I can only describe what I saw as spirits. Believe me, I've theorized how these ghosts were made real, whether by trickery or some form of hallucination induced by the smoke. On my father's honor, I tell you my mind was clear before and after, leaving me to believe this was all real. As I watched the images dancing in the firelight, one of them rose, a man with the face paint of an owl, and he hunched over a table upon which sat a wooden tray and a large ceramic bowl. With a long fork, he dug into the bowl and pulled up strands of meat. Ew. Pink and plump, with the white of fat and sinew still attached. A thin red liquid dribbled from the meat as he laid it in a dish, and by the time he stopped, it was piled up to a healthy heap. Ew, are they gonna just sit here and eat raw meat? Ugh. The man left the back of the house and walked to one of the smaller trailer-sized buildings. He unlocked the door and entered the room into welcoming darkness. I went after him to find a way to see inside, but I couldn't find any windows or a way to enter besides that front door. And then I heard the growl, a growl of some creature so horrendous and powerful, I still call it to mind in times of quiet. It was a thing of pure aggression, and the trailer shook on its foundation, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I found my feet and ran back to the forest and didn't stop until I'd arrived at Shima's. And this is where the story turns darker. Woody reaches into his bag for a container of water, and as he brings it to his lips, it shakes in his hands and spills into his beard. I went back to the mountains past that river with no name the very next morning. I was still petrified from what I had experienced, but curiosity had taken me over, and I had to know what manner of beast could make that sound. Once in the clearing beyond the forest of spruce and fir, I moved to the small trailer from the night before and picked the lock. Fear held me outside that trailer for a while, until the sun had made its way over the short building and a shadow stood over me. Opening the door took courage, but once I stepped inside, the sounds of soft breathing piqued my curiosity again. The pale light from outside shone upon a man on the floor. He was covered in rags and wore his own soil, and smelled of it too. His hair was long and matted, hands were dark and scabbed and misshapen, and his body was contorted. Thick chains were bound to his wrists and ankles, which were secured to a metal ring on a slab of cement. Beside him sat an overturned dish with scraps of meat from last night that Owl had brought in. From where I stood, maybe 6 feet away, I heard his soft murmur of sleep, but as I fetched around in my backpack for my camera, a noise emanated from this man of which I've never heard, a slowly building gravelly moan that clicked in the back of his throat. He looked up, and what I saw was not a human face. Maybe it was before. He had the tan skin and features of the Southern Ute, but it was gaunt with a sunken, ashen-brown face and urine-colored eyes which sunk in the sockets. His lips were dried, cracked, and bloody, and parts of them were missing, so I could see the white of teeth beneath them. The stench of an open grave lingered around him, and it filled my nostrils. If I wanted to vomit, fear had petrified me to do nothing more than stand and stare. Then he suddenly leapt from the floor, hands raised and mouth craned wide like that of a biting snake. His chains snapped at the end of their length and drew his arms back. Still, the man thrashed and pulled against his binds, stretching his limbs to the point of detachment. His mouth stayed open, and a milky drool slipped out and splattered on the floor, tongue darting out and waving like a tentacle. And that's when hands grabbed me from behind. I was taken by the shoulders and yanked from the trailer, my whole world spinning end over end until I landed in the dirt outside. Woody caps his water container and drops it in his backpack. He stares past you at the wall and wrings his hands as he continues. There stood Owl, who closed and locked the door that kept the fiend imprisoned. Owl turned on me, and though he wore none of the paint from the night prior, anger was all over his face. "Leave these lands, stranger," he yelled in a deep, hate-filled voice. "He who lays eyes upon the Wendigo is forever cursed." I wanted to reply to Owl and ask what he meant and ask what was wrong with that man inside, but I couldn't find my words. I stood and ran, hauling to the forest, and blacked out on the path until I reached Shima's house and regained my senses. I slept that day, but prior to the night, Shima roused me from my sleep. She had a look far worse than disappointment, and spoke little except to order me from her house. I asked why, but she refused to talk and demanded I go. I hardly had time to grab my belongings, and already a crowd had formed outside her home. And though I didn't know what crime I had committed against these people, I realized later that I had seen things unallowed and had broken an unspoken trust. As I left the reservation, no one spoke a word to me, but I heard murmurs from the crowd, a single word, Wendigo. Woody cups his hands together and sucks in a deep breath of air. He cracks his knuckles and rolls his head in a circle to stretch his neck. That's the end of that story. I haven't told a soul about it, and prior to the outbreak, no one would have believed me. Now it don't seem so far-fetched. Well, you're right about that. Oh, I guess that's it for talking to Woody. Okay, well, I think I'm going to cut this one short. I know that story was kind of long and we didn't really get anything done, but I think in the next one, I'd really like to go to that convenience store. And I know I'm not going to have time to do that in this episode, so I only have like 3 minutes. So that's going to be it for this one. Sorry if it was kind of boring. We'll get more action-y in the next one, I'm sure. Alright, well, thank you all for tuning in once again, and I will be back soon with the next one. Bye!